Well, greetings and welcome back to another episode of When It Was Real. The show focuses exclusively on the glory days of the WWF in the 1970s, the perfect time to grow up as a professional wrestling fan. Now, I'm pretty much the guy who sets up and takes down the ring. Well, I did not work for Mel Phillips, but that other guy, he's a headliner par extraordinaire. He wrote the wonderful book that our show is named after. Nikita, how are you, my friend?
Beautiful, Benny. Thank you. And again, I'm indebted to Monte and the Pharaoh for letting us borrow their YouTube channel. Thank you, guys. And thank you, everybody that's been tuning in. We've been getting great response. Beautiful.
Yes, a lot of good feedback from everybody, and thank you for that. So we're going to do some quick business here, pay the bills, and then we're going to get into our show. This is Benny Scala, the one and only player. Folks, I am beyond excited to be co-hosting this new show, When It Was Real. And I am just as excited to be announcing our new sponsor, the Free Spirited Company. Free Spirited is a phenomenal old-school clothing company that specializes in short and long-sleeve T-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, graphic tees, heck, even yoga pants. These T-shirts are, to quote Rocky's manager Mickey Goldmill, a wake of art. Yours truly will be rocking the Free Spirited merch on each and every episode of When It Was Real. Not only are these shirts eye-catching, but they are very comfortable as well. Like what you see? Please go to shopfreespirited.com and use our special code MP20 to receive a 20% discount on all purchases. Again, that is shopfreespirited.com, and that code is MP20. As the poet laureate of the Monte and the Pharaoh YouTube channel, I will leave you with this. If you like what you see, go buy a tee. Heck, maybe 2 or 3. When your friends tell you, hey, you look like the bomb, send them over to shopfreespirited.com. And I must once again...
Looks like the superstar.
Jonah, yeah, I'm rocking the merch. Yeah, we're identical. But Nikita, we do our toast before every show, and I wanted to make a toast to the men and women that were made it so real that they made your book necessary and they made this show necessary. Salute.
So toast of you. And boy, did they pay, especially our topic for the night.
Oh yes. Well, tonight we're taking a look at the career of a beloved figure of the 60s and 70s. He was billed at 601 pounds from Morgan's Corner, Arkansas, the one and only Haystacks Calhoun. And let me flash up Mr. Haystacks Calhoun here. There he is. So, Nikita, Morgan's Corner gets thrown in the mix with Buzzards Creek, Oregon, and parts unknown as far as kayfabe places. But was this guy 601 pounds legit?
I'll tell you what. Yes, more. And we'll get to that in a bit when Bruno lifts him. I'll tell you what the story is behind that. But about Morgan's Corner and Buzzard Creek, you know, there is a place on the map called Buzzard Creek. It's a creek.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Because my wife, Victoria, is from Oregon. So she said, there's no place called Buzzard Creek. I said, I'll bet you. Look. And I said, here it is. But it's just a little stream of water, just a creek. But, you know, it sounds great. So, yeah, I guess Morgan's Corner, that's like something from Aunt B and Mayberry.
Yeah, I mean, there's not going to be a mailbox in Buzzards Creek, I would imagine, right?
Or Morgan's Corner, but that was good.
But William D. Calhoun was born on August 3rd, 1934 in McKinney, Texas. He reached 300 pounds at age 14 and 600 by his early 20s. And I got this off Wikipedia. I'm not sure how true it is, but he was reportedly discovered by a traveling wrestling promoter who spotted him moving cows across the field, I guess. So in any event, he started wrestling in 1956 for Orville Brown as Hillbilly Calhoun. And then he started wrestling in his home state in 1957, his home state of Texas, as Country Boy Calhoun. So, Nikita, these are the days when televised wrestling was national and got huge ratings. I mean, isn't this guy just like a made-for TV figure for this time period?
Well, it's a lot like we said about Freddie Blassie. You know, the wrestling for TV was made for him because yeah, he was perfect without a doubt. How can you not put an entity like that on television? It's just like, I mean, there he is. I mean, and he became a household name. I
Right.
mean, well, okay, I'll let you take it, but it's like he was doing commercials for mattresses. He appeared with, let me get you this. This unfortunately talks about the end of his life, but in his heyday, they say he was, very much beloved, and he would be like 51 weeks a year on the road, and
Yeah.
he appeared with Jane Mansfield and all Groucho Marx. He was on You Bet Your Life. He was on the Tonight Show with Jack Parr, Art Linkletter's house party, and he would show different people, how you demonstrate different things for the kids. So yeah, he was definitely out there with, again, like a Freddie Blassie, rubbing elbows with the Hollywood elite because
Yeah.
he was such a big celebrity himself.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Art Linkletter's house party because that's where he threw bales of hay, and it
Yes.
led to his career-long gimmick name of Haystacks. It's really ironic. On July 3rd, 1958, in Stockton, California, Haystacks and his tag partner Kangaroo Kennedy, who I've never heard of, lost to Tiny Mills and Mike Valentino. Now, Nikita, this Valentino guy, he looks really familiar. I think I bumped into him in the town square in the Isle of Malta.
You better believe it. And that definitely would be none other than Baron Mikhail Cicluna. You better believe it. He was
Yeah.
around for a long time too.
Yeah, I mean the funny thing is, not to get sidetracked, but I think Cicluna came into the WWF in 1966, and I mean, what a buildup he got, because I happened to find on YouTube a Capital, one of the TV shows from early '66,
Wow.
and all Ray Morgan talked about was this undefeated Baron Cicluna, and did he have a chance against Bruno? And they even interviewed, I think, Tarzan Tyler, and he goes, "Yeah, this Cicluna guy is a tough guy. He might beat Bruno." I mean, really, pushing this guy to the moon. But he was already 37 years old. Can you imagine if he was a younger man when he came to the Northeast?
Well, he had the perfect body for it. I
Yeah,
mean, even at the end, I mean, he started to lose. He finished in 83, right around mid 83.
he's like 54 by then.
Yeah, and he was losing some muscle tone, but he never got heavy. Never at any time. He was always, as Bruno described him on television in 1978 on a December the 12th taping, he said he almost looks lean, but he said when I wrestled him, and Bruno mentioned, back in the 60s, he's like, he was the same build, but again, that twisted steel kind of a thing, like Kowalski and Danucci, it's like an octopus when they get a hold of you. You
He
ain't
was
getting loose.
I always said he was a Clydesdale. He was like regal,
Yeah.
and he was
Yeah.
long and slender, and but not muscular, but not flabby either by any means.
No. And I loved when he wore the red velvet cape.
Oh
And
God,
of
yeah.
course, he had the boots with the iron cross. And it was like, that's great, man. I mean,
Never changed his facial expression ever.
and always grabbed his ear.
No matter, yeah, kick him in the nuts, he grabs his ear. Go figure, right?
Yeah.
Maybe his nerves weren't wired correctly, but it doesn't take too long for Vince McMahon to spot Haystacks. I mean, not like he could hide anywhere, right?
No.
I found his first MSG appearance on September 17th, 1958. He defeats Jack Terry, and then he starts making the Garden every month, but he's still wrestling all over the place. Now, on December 15th, 1958, he's defeated by some guy named Wladek Kowalski in Montreal for the Montreal version of the world title. Now, we already said it. You already said it. But it's a safe bet to say that by the end of the 50s, Haystack was one of the most popular wrestlers in the country, right?
Like a Gorgeous George, a well-known household name. When you see, like, it would be today's Rock or Stone Cold or whoever the hell they have out there today, and it's like, yeah, you say wrestling, or even before the Giant, he would be the first Giant because he was about 6'4", but that 600 pounds. And I know when I saw him live, the times that I saw him, it was like it's unbelievable. And he didn't have like Andre where they brought him in for that WrestleMania with that cart because he was having troubles at the time. He was injured later in years, Andre. But Calhoun walked down the aisle. Sometimes he walked with a purpose, hang the horseshoe up in the corner. It'd give you 5 to 10 minutes, nothing spectacular. But when he was done, he put the horseshoe on and walk under his own power away. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's impressive. That man is 600 friggin' pounds.
I wouldn't say he was mobile, but he wasn't immobile either. I mean, he could move. I mean, for a guy that size, I thought he moved pretty well.
I saw a few matches, TV matches in '78, where he got a little bit pissed, and it was Johnny Rods because Johnny came off the top rope and knocked him down. And it pissed him a little bit. He got up and he was trying to corner Rods. He could move when he had to. He
Right.
wasn't going to do any cartwheels or any kind of leapfrogging, but
No drop
he could
kicks.
move around.
Yeah. So was he the original Andre? I mean, he wasn't a giant, but I think he was 6'4". I actually show him beating Bull Curry and the original Sheik in DC on January 29th, 59. I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? And he wrestled numerous handicap matches, and he rarely lost. And when he did, it was usually via countout. Rarely got. I don't know if he ever got pinned, but did Vince Sr. become his booker at this point?
Not that I know of. He was pretty much a free agent. He could go wherever he wanted. And that's why there are times when he's not a mainstay in the Northeast. And then towards the mid to later 70s, he'd hang around for 6 months or so. But he could go wherever. He was an attraction, Japan, anywhere. I mean, can you imagine when he appeared in Japan? But this is pre-Andre days now, folks. Remember that. And it's like, what the hell? You can't believe what you're seeing. And when they say 601 pounds, people say, yeah, we know wrestling lingo. He's probably about, 450. It's like, Because I'll tell you what, when he did meet Bruno, okay, and I know, Benny, you want to talk about it, February 27th of 61, this was not the champion yet, Bruno. This was the young kid.
This was the rookie, Bruno, or almost rookie.
Listening to a shoot interview not too long ago that Bruno did, he said, I started to get vocal because, of course, Calhoun's a household name. And he said, I could lift this guy. And they're like, get the hell out of here. You can't lift him. He's like, I bet you I can. I have that much confidence in my strength that I can lift him. So it actually pissed off the old man because then they started to get letters. Then they got people calling in. It's like, we want to see this Italian kid, this so-called strongman, see if he can actually lift Calhoun. So Bruno said after a while, it was just so much pestering that they said, all right, screw it. So they booked the match. So as everybody has seen the photo by now, Bruno didn't slam him, but he got under him and he lifted him up almost to the shoulder, over, like a shoulder kind of a crotching, and up he went. And then people said, okay, wrestling's bullshit. So, he probably doesn't weigh 601 pounds as you build him. So Bruno said they had photographers, they put TV cameras, they got the big meat scales from the stockyards. He was 6'4'5". Yeah, he wasn't 601, he was 6'45". He was a huge son of a bitch.
And you could tell by looking at him, there was no way he was 400 and change. I mean, he was. I mean, I'm not surprised that he weighed 645. Not at all. But speaking of heavy guys here, so imagine him being a lighter guy in the match. He actually on October 29th, 59, he defeats 800-pound plus Happy Humphrey, and reportedly tells him after the match that it's unhealthy to be so heavy.
Happy Humphrey.
I saw Haystacks wrestle in 69 at the Sunnyside Garden. So he would have been at that point in his mid 30s, and he was still moving around pretty well. I mean, he could get around. I mean,
and again, I mean, it's like, how many people do you see with that kind of weight? Now, Gorilla Monsoon was great, to the 400 pounds, he could do leapfrogs. He was,
Right.
and he would give you the big chop off the ropes. But we'll talk about this in a couple of minutes. When they would go out of the ring, that was spectacular because when you got that much weight going in one direction, it's like a runaway house. It's like, what the hell are you going to do with this now? And you don't have to be carted off. I mean, you're slow getting up, of course, but yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. So when Bruno lifted him, and then they verified his weight, that was we need to thank Haystacks, whichever you prefer, Calhoun, because at that point Bruno becomes the Italian Superman
Right.
because he
Here's
was able to
the
lift him. They're beautiful.
interesting
See,
card though. Look at the so Bruno's they're like the semifinal. You got
look who's
Rogers
on
against
top.
Primo Carnera,
Yep,
and then you got
he was a giant.
you got Rocca and Valentine against the Kangaroos. So, and here I think I have there it is. I mean that's not he got him up there pretty high.
He sure did. Now, that's part of the problems, and that's for another show. But right there, that's making Bruno Sammartino, who was, decent name, but not quite superstar yet. That made him a superstar. And I think it pissed off Rogers, probably a lot of jealousy there. And that's when the heat started. And then, of course, it turned into, well, Bruno got suspended because they said he failed to appear. So Athletic Commission started to suspend his license. And it's like, I was never booked there. And Baltimore gets the black eye for that because that's where it occurred. And it's
Right.
like, holy shit. Boy, Baltimore and Bruno just don't work out.
Right. Wasn't he booked in Chicago and Baltimore? I think he made the booking in Chicago because he didn't know about the booking in Baltimore, right? I think that's
exactly because they wanted to screw him. I think for whatever reason, again, I think it's jealousy. I mean, you look at that, Buddy Rogers wasn't going to be able to do that. Son of a bitch. He was a great wrestler, but he didn't have that kind of strength.
Right.
And then for another show, but Bruno takes off from that point on.
And then I don't know if that helped him get the attention of the Tunnies in Toronto.
Oh, sure.
I can't imagine it hurt, right?
No, and again, see, those rules in the United States are not going to apply in Canada. So it's like, yeah, come work here, kid. Why not? And people know about you. Come on out.
Right. And Bruno he said he got pretty smart. He started at that point promoting himself as the Italian Samson in Toronto. And he did a lot of interviews because I guess there was a very large Italian population in Toronto. And he arranged for like newspaper interviews. And I think he went on a couple of radio stations and he promoted himself as the Italian strongman. I think he did some exhibitions. So he really put himself on the map in Toronto, I guess to the point where Vince Sr. wanted him back, right?
Absolutely. Well, all the baloney about Rogers and the heart attack and all that nonsense. And it's like, the funny thing is Buddy Rogers wrestled not too long after that match. Yeah, he was holding his chest. I think I'd be holding mine too after Bruno put me in an over-the-shoulder backbreaker. That shit hurt. So it's like, yeah, that helped. Thank you again, Haystacks, because Bruno, that was it. I'm going to say that launched his career. He could have just floundered in the mid-card forever,
Right.
It takes something like that to make your career. And boom, that was it.
Now, I don't know if you know anything about this or not, Nikita, but Bruno, I think I read this in his book, that Haystacks was not too keen on being taken off his feet.
Right. Well, that's his thing. He don't want to be taken off his feet and shown that, hey, this guy who at that time, like we just said, was a giant, and you're going to come in and lift him up. But then again, I don't know too many people that did it.
Right. Right. I guess that would kind of like, maybe cheapen his own gimmick, meaning Haystacks. That, how heavy could you really be if this guy lifted you up?
Yeah, exactly. But
I think it was more of a positive for Bruno than it was a negative for Haystacks.
Absolutely. And as far as I know, they really respected and had a good camaraderie with each other. With never any heat, Hey, what the hell? It's like Chief always used to tell me, and Nikolai, you glad when a guy draws, no matter what they give him, because some people did not like Haystacks Calhoun. Freddie Blassie was one of them. In fact, he pulled a lousy rib on him because Haystacks used to travel with a little dog. And of course, he needed a big vehicle. So he had a van. So Freddie, I believe it was in Hamburg, he goes outside and he starts to feed the dog X-Lax through the crack
Oh
in the
God.
window. So
Yeah.
so, and the dog, of course, he loses control, and Freddie's running around from window to window, making faces, and the dog's running around. So poor Calhoun comes out after he's done, and it's like, there's his vehicle full of shit, you know. Hey, this is the wrestling world, people. It's just, there's no holds barred, believe me.
No.
And Superstar apparently wasn't fond of him. He thought he was a sideshow freak. Guess what? He was. That's what you need, though. Who cares? The
Right.
man was still an athlete. He could get in the ring and do it. He drew. That's what you wanted. Same thing with the midgets. I never cared for them. No disrespect, but it was like that was a gimmick that drew. And our gals, too. You know, they brought them in one piece bathing suits, but nevertheless, you know, you had probably weirdos that came just to see these women battle it out. And so Haystack got the same kind of a tag that he was a sort of a freak. But you know how he started, and see if this sounds familiar to anybody. He was sitting in the audience watching a match. Don't ask me who the hell was in the ring, but apparently he got upset with whatever was going on. And here's this big kid sitting at ringside. He gets up and jumps in the ring, and it's like, hey, you know, I believe it may have been in Texas where that started, but it's like that was a great angle. Hillbilly Jim got started that way, remember, with Hulk Hogan, and because Hogan was getting pummeled maybe by Bundy and a couple others, and then Hillbilly Jim jumps up. But you know that was Chief's idea, though. The Chief was a booker because Hillbilly Jim wanted to be like a biker character. And Chief said, what the hell you want to do that shit for? That's not nothing. He said, do this hillbilly thing. You could be like Calhoun. And look at it. Same situation, sits at ringside, jumps up, gets involved. Then he becomes Hogan's partner. Then we get Uncle Elmer, Cousin Junior, on. And it's like, boy, the Chief, he had the brain for the business. That was right on.
Yeah, yeah. I think Jim was Harley Davidson in
Yes.
Memphis. Yeah, but I think
Yeah,
I don't
Harley
think that would work. That wouldn't have worked. The Hillbilly Jim was perfect.
That was beautiful. He got the song on the album, all the dolls, the whole everybody knows him.
I'm sure he made some nice money too, right?
Hell yeah, he was in a ton of main events with Hogan, so he had to have done well.
Right.
Hey, look at the Saturday night main event. I saw that with the wedding, Uncle Elmer's wedding. It's like, holy shit! Look what this just blossomed into, man.
Right.
How can you fight it?
Yeah. How many millions of people watch that on TV?
Yes.
It was ratings were ungodly. So Nikita, when we talked about Ernie Ladd, we talked about the ungodly travel schedule that he had, but Haystacks was not far behind, and he did it for years and years. You know, it's one thing being like the Cat, 6'9", 300 pounds, agile, you know, football player, but for a guy like Haystacks, that had to be impossible. You know, I can't. You said Japan. I mean, that had to be what, a 6-hour flight. How do you you know, for 6 hours, a man that size, that had to be very uncomfortable.
Brother, in those days, I think it was longer, you know, because I think you stopped over in Hawaii and then wherever you were coming from, because I know flying to Hawaii from Baltimore one time, it was like, my God, will this ever end? That was about 5 hours. So then you're going to go to Japan because in those days, the planes, they didn't hold that much fuel. So the story goes that when they stopped over in Hawaii, Haystacks was drinking all these delicious, like papaya juice, pineapple juice. He's just putting it down one after the other.
Yeah.
And it's like, you ain't thinking, you know, you got yourself a long flight, Mo. You got a long way to go. And then all of a sudden it hits. Now, I've heard the versions that he had to take a big dump. And it's like, you ain't getting in that bathroom, folks. You know how small
you
it
can get
is.
in. You probably never get out, though. Yeah.
No, you wouldn't get in there. There's no
You probably
way.
won't even get in. Yeah.
So it's like, so now what do they do? So the stewardesses held up a blanket, and he had to use the mail bag. In those days, you would take the mail, you would carry it. Of course, they emptied the mail out. One story I heard, he took a shit like a horse, and the poor people on the plane, of course, they're dying. They're probably looking, the hell with the parachute. Just let me jump out the damn door. This
Yeah,
is
I'll
killing
just
me.
do the kamikaze. Yeah.
Yeah, please. And even if it was, because the piss wouldn't have been that bad, but bad enough. Nikolai said it was he said, biggest shit in the whole world. It's like, yep, I can imagine. Because, Andre, for the people that don't know, Pat Patterson revealed this. Andre used to give himself an enema before he would take those long flights. Because for sure, same thing, Andre's not getting in that bathroom. And
Right.
he would just not drink. And I don't mean beer. I mean like nothing. No water, no nothing. And even on the flight, it's like, no, thank you. But I can't have anything till I land. I'm dead meat here. I can't get in that bathroom. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
there's Calhoun, like the stories you hear about Andre. Where the hell do you go to a hotel at? And your vehicle, you had to have a specially made vehicle to carry that much weight. So it was kind of like a van, and they would just, I guess, maneuver like a special seat. He was doing good money wise. Haystack was. So was Andre, and so were a lot of the big superstars at that time. But that shit costs a lot of money, and it's got to come. I mean, you can put it on your tax write off, but out of the gate, it's coming out of your pocket. So here you go. You got to get around. And even with the vehicle, you're not going to sleep in that, especially with that size. So what do you do when you go to a hotel? They probably looked at him and like, oh, what the hell did he stop here for? So the same problem again with the bathroom, I guess. He's going to get
Right.
in there. It's not easy. You can get in, but then it's like, oh boy, I pity the poor maid who came in there afterwards.
But when you think about it, I mean, just say you're a 600-pound guy and you live in a home, but you can have that home retrofitted, with ramps and
Yes.
and widen the door. I mean, so it's contoured to your lifestyle and your weight. But when you're trying to live as a normal person in a normal person world at 600 pounds, that just doesn't work.
No, you are the square peg in the round hole of life at that point.
Absolutely. So, Nikita, unless I missed something, I don't see Haystacks ever having a singles title. Now, he did have a bunch of regional tag titles. He actually won the NWA Canadian tag titles with Don Leo Jonathan in 66 and 68. And, of course, we remember him tagging with Tony Garea in 73, I guess. Now,
Yes.
why
June
pairing
30th.
with Garea?
May 30th, Memorial Day that year, yes.
Okay, so did they do this for Garea that this would give him the rub, put a belt on him? Because Haystacks obviously didn't need a belt.
Yes. I asked Chief many times. I said, Chief, how come you and Tony Garea didn't team up? Man, we loved them both. He said, I didn't like him. I thought he was arrogant at first, but then they became best of friends. I mean, without a doubt, Tony's a sweetheart of a guy. Hopefully we get him on one night. So with the tag team that, Calhoun is like, he can't have a singles belt because how the hell are you going to beat him? You got to pin him to win a belt because he and Garea beat Fuji and Tanaka that May 30th that we just discussed that date. But when they lose on September the 11th, the final fall, Calhoun was busted open with the horseshoe. So they stopped the match and declared Fuji and Tanaka, they get the fall because he was unable to continue and they got the belt. But if you're a singles champion, there's no way any kind of title is going to change hands that way. So it's like between his schedule being all in demand and being all over the place, and who the hell's going to pin Haystacks Calhoun,
Right.
it just didn't work out. But the curse began with he and Professor Tanaka because they were in the garden. And for that one, that was July, because it followed up the very first HBO card was on June 30th. So July 22nd, Garea and Calhoun were still champions. And for the ending of the match, 'cause they still went over. They beat the former champions, Tanaka and Fuji. They hadn't got the belts back yet. He splashes the professor. Well, he gives him another one just for good measure. He cracked 3 of the professor's ribs. Well, you can get around with cracked ribs. It's not the easiest, and it's not the most fun. If anybody's had a bruised rib, God forbid if it's cracked, because every breath is agony. It's like
I was going to
somebody's
say, every time you breathe in and out, it's got to hurt.
it's like somebody's putting a knife through you, and it's like, holy shit. Now, it'll come back later in the next run in 1977, but that's where the curse began for Professor Tanaka and Haystacks Calhoun.
Okay. So, I'm on
But to
Facebook
answer
a
your
lot.
question, yeah, that got Gurria over very well.
Right.
Then
And was that his
Haystacks
rookie of the year season, 73?
73? Well, yeah, he and
Okay.
does anybody remember who was in contention? Chuck O'Connor, otherwise known as
Was it really?
Executioner #2, and Big John Studd. Oh, that was a big
Oh,
mail-in. That was one of the first write in, tell us who you want for vote for Rookie of the Year. Oh yeah, that was I wrote in. They gave you the post office box. That was I think it was the office in
I
DC.
don't remember any before that. I remember the next year
Right?
was Nabisco, right? 74 was
Right,
Nabisco.
and that was just they announced it. He's rookie.
Okay.
And from that point on, they just announced it. But that was a nice little promotional gimmick. But then, of course, they had a couple of matches. But then it was like, okay, you know what? Because Tony had a damn good record out in California before he hit the Northeast. So it's like, okay, so we're going to get this guy over, make him tag champions with Calhoun. And then after that, of course, he and Dean Ho come back. Oh, boy. And what a team that was. Holy mackerel. They burned the
Yeah,
house down. And then from there, just,
absolutely.
Tony with Zabisco and then Martel, that was just always something great. But yes, that was the great rub from Calhoun. And, Calhoun was gracious, no problem. Here you go. Glad to help you, kid. And Tony,
Yeah.
he was an easy guy to work with. Everybody liked him. No problem. He knew his role. And like you say, he would lose mostly. He would get bloodied. A lot of times they'd grab his own horseshoe and bust his head with it. And then, he would either take that loss by blood or, God forbid, go, and he would go at times over the damn top rope to the floor.
Oof.
And then, of course, he ain't getting up from there.
No, he ain't getting up from that. Definitely not. Was he ever a heel, Nikita? I mean, there's a very short list of guys that were never heels. I'm thinking Bruno, Steamboat, and Tito.
And
But
Chief.
and
Or
Chief,
Tony Gurria. Tony Gurria was never a heel. Right. And there would be no, I think Calhoun would probably take a swing at you if you suggested it. It's like, why would you want to do that? It's
Right.
like, I'm so popular. And he was lovable. I mean, without a doubt. Because I remember studio wrestling on TV Hill in Baltimore. Channel 11 would come on Saturdays. And just a little studio they would shoot. And he would come out and he would talk about, and we would always, I remember my parents hated wrestling when I loved it, but I remember watching that with them as a kid, a really small kid. And this is in the 60s. And, everybody would laugh. He'd say, well, Mr. Calhoun, what do you have for breakfast? A dozen eggs, a pound of bacon, a gallon of milk, like 85 biscuits, and he'd go on. And, everybody got a kick out of that. You listen to what he eats, and it's like, I got to stay 600 pounds, so it takes a lot to fill me up.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So, now, I also did some research, and I found he never had an NWA World Championship match. We talked about this before the show. I read something online that mentioned that there was a NWA rule that a championship match could not be staged if there was a 200-pound weight difference between the two wrestlers. So I'm thinking this is kayfabe along the lines of Parts Unknown and those tournaments in Rio. But I don't think that Haystacks putting a title on him would have been a good idea anyway, no?
Well, for the effort, like we just said, it's like, how the hell are you going to beat the guy? And he's always on the run, a lot like Ernie Ladd. He's not in one place.
He's not going to stay in one place.
No, so it's like that, he's going to be gone. And again, how in the hell is Harley Race going to beat him? No disrespect intended at all, because Harley Race one of the all-time greats, or Terry Funk or anybody else, Jack Briscoe, is like, how the hell are you going to pin?
And make it look believable.
And they were 2 out of 3 because that was an NWA rule, 2 out of 3 fall matches for the title. So it's like, ain't going to happen. How the hell are you going to make him submit? What are you going to do? Hold a tray of food in front of him and make him say give up because I ain't going to give it to him? You ain't going to make that guy give up. So it's like, nah, it just wouldn't work. So that was that was another true fiction, I like to say. It was believable. Now we have a rule, anything over 200 pounds, because Andre's had title matches with people. I know he wrestled Harley Race and other people like that in the NWA.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, I mean, and Andre was pushing 500 maybe by that time. Race was 250. So there was that 200-pound differential.
Sure, but it did sound good. It worked.
Yeah. All right. So now I'm up to 19. Oh no, before that, I looked at WrestlingData.com, and I mean the guy was durable. I mean for about 20 years, pretty consistent. 200 matches every year, and we don't really know the WrestlingData.com. I think if anything, it's missing matches, So it could have been maybe 250, but I mean, despite his weight, I mean, for 2 decades, he's keeping up this unbelievable schedule.
Well, I'll tell you what. My book, When It Was Real, this is where we really dig deep into Haystacks Calhoun. In 1974, he was teaming. And he had in the past with the Chief. Very popular team. Again, intelligent booking. So Bruno's going to, it's the night Bruno wrestles Tolis, July 22nd of 74, when he crushed Tolis with the over-the-shoulder backbreaker. So Calhoun and Chief are wrestling the then hated Valiant brothers, newly crowned tag team champions.
Okay.
So Calhoun's cut open. He's out of it. Chief's in there. He's getting destroyed now by the 2 Valiants. Bruno hits the ring to make the save. Next month, Bruno and Chief team up for the very first time to go against the Valiant brothers. Brilliant booking. It worked. Because then I've got a couple of pictures, too, of Bruno and Chief helping Calhoun back to the dressing room. And you got to give the guy credit. He wasn't afraid to bleed because he even wrestled.
No, that happened a lot.
The original Sheik, he was in Detroit all the time with Ed Farhad. So you know what happens with him. You're getting the pencil no matter what.
Yeah, you're bleeding no matter what.
And Sheik was, Calhoun was okay with it. Fine, whatever it takes. So boom, he did that. And then 76, they tried him with Kevin Sullivan at a few TV tapings. And, Kevin Sullivan, no disrespect, God rest his soul, he was kind of small, for the Northeast.
He was, right. It wouldn't have worked.
No, he was just too small.
It wasn't the demonic Florida Kevin Sullivan. Maybe that would have worked, but yeah, maybe the clean-cut guy from Boston.
Yeah, they tried to push that. That didn't work. So now we're getting into 1977, and he starts to get a lot more sporadic, but he has some important dates with the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. One of the main ones at the Nassau County Coliseum on June 20th, he wrestles the new champion, Superstar Billy Graham. And again, as I said earlier, Superstar wasn't a fan of Calhoun, but I don't think this really mattered. That it was a 29-second victory for the Superstar. He attacked him from behind, knocked him out of the ring. In 20, as soon as the bell rang, Calhoun turns around. He didn't even get to hit him with the horseshoe, just nailed him, throws him over the top rope, and he gets counted out in 29 seconds. But he had the title match. Now, we've talked about this before. There were only so many people and so many dates, or there were too many people and so little dates to get in the Garden against the Superstar. So if you didn't hit the Garden, then you got a shot in Long Island at the Nassau County Coliseum. Strongbow, Gurria, Zbyszko, and Calhoun. This was Calhoun's shot. Not bad. I mean, the rest of the year, he, after Billy White Wolf's injury on the May 24th taping, he kind of picks up where he left off with Chief. Because at that point, I don't think they knew quite what to do. The office. It's like, White Wolf did have a legitimate injury. But according to Scott Teal, he decided he was going to go, and he was wrestling actually in Hawaii a couple of the nights that he was supposed to be injured and couldn't appear in the Northeast. Nevertheless, he wasn't coming back. So it's like, Strong Gun White Wolf for the tag champs. What the hell do we do? So they start throwing Calhoun in there with Chief. But he also helped Bob Backlund get over. On August 16th, they wrestled a handicap 6-man match. Bob Backlund and Calhoun against Rocky Tomeo, Johnny Rods, and I believe it was Jack Evans. And it worked out beautiful. It really helped Backlund get over. And at the end of the match, it was 2 falls. Calhoun put the big splash, and Backlund got up on his back while he had his man pinned, and it was just beautiful. And it really kind of helped the new kid come along. Backlund hadn't had, he was having his TV matches, but it's like another rub by Haystacks.
Sure.
That's great.
Sure.
The hell, that's a beautiful thing. But here we go again with Professor Tanaka. This goes up to Jack Witchy's up in North Attleboro. This was on August 19th. Calhoun's wrestling. Does anybody remember Ted Adams? This guy was a real short guy, but Witchies would have like 4 matches. They didn't have a lot. So they're wrestling Tanaka and Fuji. And in this match, Tanaka's ankle gets injured by Calhoun. And the reason I know this is because the next night they were supposed to be in Philadelphia at the Spectrum. Professor couldn't be there. So Fuji wrestles with Rocky Tomeo, or no, Moose Monroe. No, I'm sorry, it was Tomeo. Tomeo and Maivia was his partner, and they won that match because it doesn't matter. Fuji with Tomeo doesn't mean shit. So, we can put them over. And then he was in Boston teaming with Putski. They gave that a little bit of a whirl, but it really didn't go anywhere. But I did see his only appearance in Baltimore in 1977. There was a steel cage match, a return match with Putski and George Steele. Calhoun was guarding the door. And he did that quite often. He did that in Baltimore a couple of times. When Fred Blassie wrestled Morales, they'd have Haystacks guarding the door. Or referee, but all you got to do is open the damn door.
Right.
But then, of course, like the heels would say later, well, he didn't open the door in time when I told him I wanted to get out. That's why Morales won, or that's why the other guy won. So it's like, there was a little bit more true fiction to that, but it worked. But that night, he wrestled Patera in his regular match that he was supposed to have. He loses, but get this, folks. He loses on a count out, but his foot gets tangled up in the ropes. He's laying, hanging out of the ring by his ankle. That's just locked in the rope. And it's like, son of a bitch. Now, when they opened the rope to let him go, it was like, boom. So it was like, man, poor Calhoun. He hit the floor hard. But that was it. He only hit the garden once on June 27th. That's Bruno's first match with Superstar after Superstar won the belt. He and Danucci against Tanaka and Fuji. This was before he hurt Tanaka. The only fall, Danucci got the kamikaze clothesline. And then, because they came on late, they were loaded that night. Because even Angelo Savaldi, Putski was in there too long with his match with Von Rashka. My God, that was 3 months in a row. People had to endure that. And the last one was no time limit. There was 20 minutes. The one before that, because Savaldi come out, because after the match, Putski's got the microphone. 5 more minutes, and Savaldi's like showing him, hey, curfew. We got to get another match. 2 matches. Yeah. My idea was having to wrestle Cicluna, but so Calhoun he didn't really get into the legit match. So he gave Tanaka a squash in the corner at the end, but luckily he didn't get hurt then, and he got hurt later. But then the next year in 78, he made one appearance in the Garden, and he wrestled Cicluna. on the August 28th show. They were on second. Did his thing, waved to the crowd. He had a lot of TV matches, without a doubt. And he was teaming with Zbyszko and things like that. But there was a battle royal at the Spectrum on August the 12th. And it ended up with Crazy Luke, Spiro Sirion, and Victor Rivera and Haystacks Calhoun. Now, of course, the three nasty guys band together. So Calhoun, he did a, when you talk about his flexibility and his mobility, he was pretty good with that at the end, because they were trying to trap him in the corner and he's hitting them with forearm smashes and he's able to hold them off pretty good. But then they finally get a hold of him. And man, you got to applaud. Now, all four were old timers at this point.
Sure.
None of these guys, they all had a lot of time in the wrestling ring. Well, they had to dump Calhoun over the top rope. So, yeah, it would take four of them, pretty good sized men, to do it. But when they put him down, they were ever so careful without looking like they were being careful. But he still got a little bit of a dumping. And, it was good. It was well done. But it showed that Calhoun, when you needed him to, he could do whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
Now, they did try to do a little thing with Crusher Blackwell that year. They teamed up Blackwell and Nikolai, who was the Super Destroyer. That was the only taping. He wore that stupid mask because Nikolai said, I could not see, I could not breathe. I missed spots because I'm blind with that shit. But it was Blackwell and Zbyszko against Super Destroyer and Crusher Blackwell. Blackwell drop kicked Calhoun out of the ring over the top rope to get the win. You'd think they were going to do something, but between Blackwell and Calhoun, it just never materialized. I don't know why, but it seemed like it had a good possibility.
Oh yeah, I think that would have been quite interesting.
Yeah, because you got two guys, and hell, Blackwell at 400 pounds. He drop kicked Calhoun, but he was drop kicking other people as well. And
yeah, amazingly agile guy.
That guy had great mobility. And, there's a guy that never got his due, Crusher Blackwell. I mean, he did in the AWA, of course, when they put when he did the Goofy Chic thing. But the WWF just never gave the man his due in 76 or the run in 78. And he could do it, without a doubt. He had stamina. He actually got a title match with Backlund at the Spectrum. And that was, a decent match. Backlund beat him with the atomic knee drop, if you can believe it.
No, I can believe it.
Yeah, he got that big bastard up 400 pounds. He wasn't parading him around the ring like he did other people.
No.
But, he still got him up there and then was able to give him the atomic knee drop and got the pin. At that point, Blackwell was undefeated. But I'll tell you this story. June 17th. Now, Calhoun was supposed to wrestle Spiro Sirion. And what happened was Patera left the area because the main event was Backlund against Patera. Now, unbeknownst to any of us, Patera got a case of the ass with the office and basically said, up your ass, I'm not staying. You put the belt on Backlund, and he left. Because I thought he was hurt, but again, the great Scott Teal, the editor of the book When It Was Real, he wised me up. He said, no, Nikita, Patera that night, he was in somewhere in the Carolinas wrestling for the NWA. He decided he was just going to leave and do his own thing. So Calhoun doesn't have a match with Arion. Arion gets the main event with Backlund. With Vince McMahon comes out, and that's when he says, there's been the managers tonight got together, Blassie and Albano, and they switched the contract. Backlund's been training for Patera all these weeks. Now he's got to face the Iron Greek. So, they're trying to build us up to get us there, and it's like, oh boy, this is wild. So you got to give Haystacks, he's booked. So they put him in the ring. Let me see. Who the hell did Haystacks beat Moose Monroe? But he spent a lot of time with Monroe on the bottom rope and Calhoun's on top of him, putting like a crush on him. So there's a lot of pressure on that bottom rope. All right, so he finally pins him. Off they go. Next match is George Steele against Bob Backlund in the main event. Well, George Steele hits the ring first, and then, he's doing all his crazy shit. Then Backlund comes in. So what do you think happens when George Steele, as he likes to go and jump on the ropes and do his crazy shit, bang, the rope snaps. The bottom rope breaks. Well, it wasn't because of George Steele. It was because 600 pounds of Haystacks Calhoun had been leaning on it for about 15 minutes before that, or maybe 5 minutes. He didn't last that long, but it was enough that it put strain on the rope. Well, man, Backlund and Steele worked that to perfection. The State Athletic Commission was going crazy because you got this big length of rope dangling around. And of course, they're using it like two pros would. Now, okay, you're going to make chicken salad out of chicken shit. Here we go.
Absolutely.
It was a great match. I mean, we loved it. It was exciting. But again, I think there was like 5 heart attacks by the state athletic commissioners. So, they finally got everything under control. They restored order. And then it was like, okay, you had a great match. But you can attribute that to Haystacks Calhoun without a doubt.
Amazing. I have his last match at the Garden. You can correct me if I'm July 2nd, 79, with Steve Travis and DiBiase, and they lost to the Valiant brothers.
No, now 79. It's a little weird. That was June. That was the very first battle royal in the history of Madison Square Garden that they had on June 4th. So, okay. And that, believe it or not, was the only time the Valiant brothers appeared, and it was a non-title match. You're correct, though. Was Travis, and they beat Travis, who was the Rookie of the Year. The next time the Valiants defended the belts in the Garden was when they lost to Putski and Santana on October 22nd. But before that, it was always like the Valiants in a 6-man, which was Calhoun's last match on July 2nd. They were in a 6-man, all 3 Valiants, and it was Calhoun and I think Danucci and Putski or somebody or Santana, and they were doing that, and with no fanfare. All the years that he came to Madison Square Garden, packed into people, just that quick, the lights went out. Boom. And that was the end for Haystacks Calhoun. Now, he made some TV appearances because, as they always time things, like I say, it was a great infomercial. Championship Wrestling, WOR's Channel 9 was to set up the Madison Square Garden shows that were coming up. So that was May 28th, right, that they were doing the promos for the upcoming June 4th. And Calhoun was very good because before that, Albano came out and he said, I got all 3 of my Valiants and I got Bulldog Brower. I have an undecided advantage. We're going to win this battle royal because my men are going to team up and we're going to eliminate everybody else. So when Calhoun came out, he spoke in a very sensible manner. He said, first of all, there's the rules of a battle royal are that there's not to be any teaming up. It's supposed to be every man for himself. And he went on to say, I've seen a lot of unscheduled vacations take place as a result of the battle royal. A lot of men have gotten hurt going over the top rope to the floor. And it's like, he's not coming out talking like some kind of carnival barker. It was a very smart and sensible interview.
Measured, yeah.
It was well done. And it set things up and put them over well. But he didn't hit Baltimore at all in 79. He was the guest referee at the Spectrum for Backlund Valentine return match, but 79, he was very sparse. And then that was it. He faded away from the Worldwide Wrestling Federation.
Yeah, he did wrestle in 80, but it was mostly in, I look like Texas and Canada. He was 46. But according to WrestlingData.com, they give him credit for 3,960 matches. I got to believe it was well into 4,000, which, I mean, to me, that's an amazing career.
Amazing career. And again, a guy with that size to travel about, carry that much weight, and just survive the bullshit. The vehicle, the planes, finding a hotel, and then finding a place to eat. In between your travels to get to and from an arena. I guess a lot of restaurants were figuring, okay, good. If it's not a smorgasbord, line this guy up because he's going to definitely put us. He's going to make the payday for us tonight. The payroll will be secure.
You
But
at that weight, you got to be choking down about 10,000 calories a day just to maintain that weight. That's a lot of food.
well, that brings me to I found this article through the great Crowbar Press archives. Thank you again, Scott Teal. It says failing health puts a tough hold on wrestler Haystacks Calhoun. This was by a guy named Barry Horn from the Fort Worth Star Telegram, their version of the paper. So, it goes on to talk about a lot of the things that we did, the different appearances. It says he earned $8,900 a week in 1961. So,
Wow.
I mean, Dan Sebastiano could probably come up and tell us what that would equate to in today's dollars and cents. But even if you just got the day's money, damn, Sam, $9,000 a week, it ain't bad. You'd be
That's
riding
almost
high.
half a mil, right? Like 468.
Yeah, but back then, it was about triple, if not quadruple. So,
Oh, that's probably 2 or 3 million now.
yeah. So
If not more, yeah.
this interview was conducted. He was in a mobile park home in McKinney, Texas.
So his hometown.
And yeah, he had a leg amputated. He suffered bad with diabetes, and you would imagine someone that weight. And because the guy said, "Well, gee, all that money you made through the years, and you end up like this." And the interviewer was asking, and he's like, "Yeah, I made a lot of money, but again, how much do you think it cost to feed me, my travel, and everything it took for me to accommodate my size?" And you got to give him credit. And you could tell because he used to wrestle barefoot usually. But then towards the end, I guess with circulation problems, he was wearing like a shoe. It looked like a work shoe, actually. The last couple of years he appeared. And, that's the first thing to go with a diabetic is the feet. So poor Haystack, it just got bad for him and he had to amputate his leg. And he was living with his mother and his daughter at the time because he said between the three of us, we make one good person. I guess they must have had their problems too. But you see, this is what happens. All the glory, when the lights go out and everybody goes home, you're left to deal with it. And sometimes, you got a losing hand to deal. And it's like, geez, poor. But we remember him fondly, without a doubt, because he did bring a lot of joy. He's known for the horseshoe that he would always carry to the ring. And I mean, always. He was never without the lucky horseshoe, which usually, as we mentioned earlier, came back to get used against him. But it was great. He would put people over. He knew, like George Steele would always say, what the hell am I going to win for? People come to see me get beat, but sometimes to have a return match. But Calhoun was like, whatever. If you want me to put somebody over, I'll take the loss. It's not going to be a pinfall for obvious reasons, but he would take the loss by count out or blood. And it was great. And besides Chief, he was teaming with Zbyszko a lot in 78. Tony Gurria, of course. Maivia, just about anybody. He was a good tag team partner because he was a good attraction.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a numbers guy too. I mean, and everybody says, well, he made so much money. But, if you make $9,000 a week, but it costs you $8,980 between food, transportation, so you're left with $20. I mean, you got your medical expenses. There's a lot of transportation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We hear that a lot about certain people say, Vince McMahon should have done this. Vince McMahon should have done that. You're an independent contractor. Just like when you make a movie, they give you the contract. Here's what we're going to pay you.
Right. Okay? You negotiate that, but then you gotta live with it.
Yeah. We're not going to support you for the rest of your life. Like me with the police department. Hey, do I think I got paid fair? Hell no. But I agreed to it. I can't go back and argue now and say, well, man, they should have given me a lot more. Geez, somebody should go up there and sue them. Well, like with actors, there is the Screen Actors Guild. And that's why I don't understand. Why in the hell, if you're on television, why all of the wrestlers aren't part of that? There it is. It's on cable, right? Pay-per-views and things like that. They should all be in the Screen Actors Guild.
I
Then
would
you'll
think
be
so.
covered. You get your time in that way for damn sure, man. Because I've known people like they used to film Northwest Exposure out here where I am near Seattle. And I've gone to a couple of those Screen Actor Guild meetings. And one gal, she stood up and she was like a semi-regular. She got a lot of screen time. And she said, I'm never going to qualify for any of that pension. Because George Steele, when he did the Ed Wood movie, and he was damn good. Because, by the way, Adam West had recommended Nikolai for that part. And when Nikolai got the packet from whatever the production company was, he's like, this is George Steele. It's his brother. So they contacted George Steele because it was funny. Whoever the director was, when they got on set, he said to George Steele, do you have any acting experience? And who in the hell was the comedian?
It was Bill Murray. Bill Murray,
yeah. And he's like, my God, he's been acting for like 40 years, 30 years. What the hell? Of course. You think he's really George the Animal Steele, you stupid son of a bitch? Yeah, he makes you believe. Trust me.
Yeah.
So but George Steele said, I quit the damn Screen Actors Guild because I'm not going to do anything else. And he said it was costing me more in dues. I'm getting residual checks for like $20 and bullshit like that. So it's not all that much glory like people think. And nobody's responsible except you.
Right.
And in this case,
you're your own boss, for better or for worse.
Yeah, Calhoun wasn't out. I know he wasn't doing drugs, and he certainly wasn't out going to bars and things like that because he couldn't get around. But his lifestyle it cost a lot of money.
Yeah. I read a story online that, and maybe you can tell me if it's true or not. Haystacks and Andre went to an all-you-can-eat place, and can you imagine like being the manager of an all-you-can-eat place and you see these two guys walk in? It's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I start filling out the bankruptcy paperwork, but I would have loved to be in the restaurant that night because I can only imagine. Like I said, to support 600 pounds, you have to eat at least 9,000 calories a day. J.A. Will in the chat room, he can back me up on that one. It's usually your weight times 15. That's a lot of calories. I mean, that's a lot of.
I did hear that they said, okay, we'll give the guy a couple $100, because Andre was big-hearted. He was a good guy. And, Calhoun was too, so they did the right thing. But it would give you a heart attack if you were running the restaurant. It's like, holy shit, that's it. We're finished.
Right. Now, Nikita, why didn't he get in the Hall of Fame right away? I mean, he died regardless before the Hall of Fame was even created. But why wasn't he in the first class? It seems like a no-brainer.
The first class, and I was there, and it's coming up June 9th of 94. It was in Baltimore, just a little at the Hilton. It was, I don't say a little, but that was one of the first times that they brought everybody together, like old timers, legends, however you want to call it. And people were having the wrestlers were having a hell of a good time. The fans were loving it because there was a meet and greet before the night's festivities, except for the inductees. We didn't have access to them, but I was able to peek backstage. And Chief and Jimmy Valiant, you couldn't separate them with a crowbar. They were just having a good old time. They hadn't probably seen each other in 20 years or better.
Wow.
When Morales walked in and saw Morocco, they were hugging. And I mean, they were so happy. They hadn't seen each other in all those years. So it was a wonderful experience for the wrestlers as well as the fans. But so that night it was Freddie, Chief, Bobo Brazil. They put in James Dudley, and that was a class act when everybody says Vince McMahon's a bastard, because James Dudley, they said he was Bobo's manager. I mean, I don't think he was on television or anything like that. They said he was like the shoot manager, but they inducted Dudley. But he was a big company guy. He did a lot of things for Capital
Yeah, he was
Wrestling.
loyal.
So that was nice. But why I say Vince was very good, it wasn't just that, because a lot of times when I would go with Nikolai to the Raw tapings, Dudley would show up because I think he lived in D.C. and Vince bought him a wheelchair. And he would take time because Nikolai was always trying to wait to get Vince's ear with things. And sometimes he'd spend an hour with Dudley, whatever, before the show started, of course. So it's like he didn't blow the guy off and say, you're yesterday's news. See you. No, he took time and he was decent with the guy. Yeah. So who else that night? Blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Freddie, that one. Well, whoever I missed, we'll catch up with later. Arnold Skolin. Yeah, that's right. Arnold, he was put in that night. But then they had another class after that, and then a third before it got the idea to really make it a spectacular event.
Right.
But Calhoun should have been in there long before, without a doubt, because here's a guy that put a lot of money into the Capital Wrestling Corporation through the years, without a doubt. But then it became a situation where it's kind of like, well, what can you do for me? That's when you get the football players and Pete Rose. And I love Pete Rose, but he has no business on the WWE.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was no value from their perspective to put a guy who's been deceased for 20 years or whatever.
Well, Ivan Koloff just finally made it, and
yeah,
we're
thank
grateful
God
for that.
Yeah, I'm very glad for that. Long overdue, but it definitely well deserved.
Yes. How could you not have? Pedro got put in years ago, but he refused to show up because I think it was Savio Vega accepted it on his behalf. Yeah. So Pedro just, I don't know. I guess he got a bad taste for them or whatever. I don't know the particulars, but he didn't show up. But he did get inducted. And you got to have all of your champions, for the love of Pete. I mean, come on. Right. How can you not?
Yeah. Without Bruno, to me, it was never.
Now that, I believe at that point in time, they really had a brick and mortar in their mind because, they had the Hall of Fame in Amsterdam. And where is it? It moved to now.
Wichita Falls, Texas, wasn't it?
Wichita, yes. So it's like they saw the value in it, but I don't think it's going to materialize. But if it had, and there was definitely, Tony Villano, I got to give credit to Tony. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good guy, Tony.
Yeah, Tony's a great guy. And it's like, if we're going to do this brick and mortar building, you got to have Bruno. Kind of like Canton, you got to have football players, statues outside, or the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. It's like even outside the damn stadiums, you got statues of Brooks Robinson and Frank Robinson and people like that. But so it's like, okay, we got to get Bruno in here. A lot of people took credit and say, I got Bruno together with Vince. And it's like, no, Vince got together with Bruno because he wanted to. Nobody did anything.
Right.
Vince got a good business sense and knew we needed him.
Yeah. So, Nikita, last week we made the statement that there will never be another human being like Fred Blassie. I think we could say the same thing about Haystacks. Despite tipping the scales at 600 pounds plus, traveled the world over and entertained us fans for about a quarter of a century.
Yes, without a doubt. When television was new back in the 50s, the Dumont Network, I mean, he just about filled the screen, I guess, but he became a household name.
There weren't, correct me if I'm wrong, there were not many. Like Blassie transcended into the mainstream. I guess Gorgeous George may have, and Calhoun may have, but that was the exception to the rule, wasn't it? That didn't happen very often.
Right, because, people would always scoff at it for whatever reason.
They looked askance at wrestling, maybe. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah. And that's why the discrepancy came up where they said, Bruno lifted him, but he doesn't weigh 601 pounds. And it's like, well, let's find out. And then they were proven, hey, bastard, he's 645. How about that? And it's like, oh, shoot. See, true fiction. Wrestling, look, when people say that F word, fake, it's like, go to hell. because there's nothing fake about what your body absorbs. It's
Right.
very real. It has to be controlled. There are predetermined outcomes because otherwise the freaking belt would be changing every other day. You can't have that. So it's like, but when they go out there, and it at least used to be, here's the finish, go do your thing. Nobody had to tell you what to do or say. Like Nikolai said with the promos, Vince would pick up the paper and say, okay, Baltimore, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here we go. Boom, boom, boom. We're going to bring you, you, and you. And that was it. They didn't redo anything. They didn't reshoot it. That was it. Boom, you're off to the race. And they knew what to say. Very much off color in those days. You couldn't get away with it now, which is why I say there's no heat, because you're not allowed to say anything to get heat. So that's the way it is.
Well, now your entire promo scripted.
That too.
I mean, did they even?
I would accept that if you could say things that would be inflammatory, or what do they call today? Because I always used to say, I'm pissed off. I'm not offended. You know, anything offensive. It's like, but that's what you got to do. You gotta have somebody offended to come and see the other bastard get his brains beat out. But there's nobody getting their brains beat out anymore. It's just, I don't know. I saw something the other day. I'm not going to disparage anybody because I still say, God bless you. It takes a lot to get in there. You risk a lot, but it's like, holy shit. Let me go put one of my tapes in. Forget it. I'm happy.
Yeah. I'm thinking of Ernie Ladd saying that Putski stayed up all night studying for a blood test. You can't say that stuff anymore.
That's mild.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Yeah. That the other one. Yeah, he was pretty unfiltered. I mean,
everybody, I mean, wow. But you had to be. I mean, geez, you know, they would call Bruno a spaghetti bender. Okay, that's not so bad, but today it would be. You know, today you'd have probably picket signs outside as like,
oh hell yeah, no, you're right.
That's not all that, but you know, it could be looked upon as it is.
Right. All right, my friend, let's put a wrap on this. I want to give many thanks to everyone who joined us tonight for When It Was Real. We have some great stuff planned for you. Actually, can we announce next week, Nikita?
Do it. Please do it.
Next week we have, it's Hank Klimkowski, right? Is that his name?
Hank Klimkowski.
He was Hank Hudson in the Pittsburgh territory, and he's going to talk to us about the legendary Pittsburgh territory and studio wrestling, which to me is one of the, as a fan, one of the most fascinating subjects. And I'm looking forward. I think I'm going to bring a notebook and a pen. And
I'm going to be taking notes myself. I'm going to be taking notes. Yes. Hank,
and I'm going to say slow down. I can't write that fast. But yeah, he's going to be our guest, and that was such a good territory. And I mean, if I ever could find where those damn tapes are, which I guess they don't really exist anymore, but I would do anything. I mean, can you imagine that? What a treasure that would be for a wrestling fan.
Unfortunately, I think those were the batches that were retaped over to save money. Nobody knew the value in it. Just figured we'll save a couple of bucks.
Sadly. Well, who knew, right? Did they know? I mean, it's almost become cultic. You know, the studio wrestling. It's like it's like a cult thing. It's just so damn good, and people still love it to this day. I mean, Greg Barry in the chat saying Bill Cardell, the announcer. I mean, so many. The local guys with Ace Freeman, Frank Holtz, Frank Durso. But then you had the Danucci's, you had the Brunos, you had the Crusher came in quite frequently, right?
Yes, and I talked to Frank Holtz's son a lot. I'm going to have to let him know. That's a good thing you brought that up. Thank you.
Even a guy like a guy who's, to me, very underrated, Johnny Powers, who passed away within the last couple of years, came into Pittsburgh at a very young age. I think he was like 21, 22. And I think he wrestled Bruno in Forbes Field, I want to say.
Well, there's so much about it. I mean, it was its own entity, and then it went under the banner. The Valiant Brothers were born there, literally. So it's like, people, I'm telling you now, I give you my word, it's going to be a fantastic show. And we're going to let the guests talk.
These episodes,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to just be quiet. I'm going to make sure I have ink in my pen. I got a new notebook, and I am just going to listen to this guy. And I'm going to, like Ernie Ladd, sitting under the learning tree. I mean, that's what we're going to do.
We're going to love it.
It should be a lot of fun. So we'll be back next week to take you on another awesome trip in the Wrestling Wayback Machine. So for the great Nikita Brezhnikov, this is Benny Scala, the one and only player, also the poet laureate of the Monte and the Pharaoh channel. And I'm going to leave you with this. We're so glad you joined us tonight. My bet is, like us, in wrestling, you delight. We're back next Wednesday. Hope you are too. To quote Ed Sullivan, it's a really big shoe. Night, folks.
Das für Towarzysz.